Coming up, this artist had dabbled in a lot of different styles to great effect. But then one day he rolled out of bed with an awesome song idea. As he created layers and layers of immaculate sounds and off-the-wall lyrics, it all came together around a cool guitar effect. Its grand result was a sound unlike anything that had ever been on the radio at that point. Up next, this legend tells the story of creating this song, and also a story of showing it to a DJ off the record at a popular radio station, only the DJ recorded it without the artist knowing it, and he played it as an exclusive. The rough mix is what we hear today because he had to release it because the DJ played it, and it became an overnight smash. It's a great story coming up next. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you still cherish the memory of the very first album that you bought with your own money, you're gonna dig this channel. That's what this is all about. Make sure to subscribe below right now and make sure to click that little bell so that you never miss an episode. We have so many cool song stories coming out from the legends. For more content and behind the scenes footage, check out our Patreon link below and also take a look at our Vintage Years collection merch right down here. So it's time for another edition of our show, Revelations. This is where featured artists share rare stories behind their greatest songs and albums. And it's insight that you won't find anywhere else. We really dig down deep here. Today we have the story of the all-time psychedelic #1 hit, Crimson and Clover, as told in my exclusive interview with Tommy James. With Tommy James and the Shondells back in the day. Crimson and Clover has been covered by everybody, from Prince to Joan Jett. It just blew everyone's mind when it was released in the late 60s. And there are so many cool stories behind this all-time hit, including a radio station playing the rough mix without the artist's permission. He didn't even know they were playing it. They played it as an exclusive. What happened after that will surprise you. Let's get into it so that Tommy can tell you the great story. Now, as we go into this interview, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, the frames that I always wear. Right now at Zenni.com, you can choose from hundreds of styles for less than the price of a vinyl record. Actually, download the Zenni app on your phone. That's the easiest way to do it. You just put in your prescription from there, they ship them right to your door. Check it out today. Here's Tommy James on Crimson and Clover. Crimson and Clover. Well, in 1968, you come back from campaigning and the world has changed.
Oh, yeah.
And you step up and you do something. I mean, you have my immense respect for this because the music industry changes like that and you have to step up and do something different. And you did it with flying colors. The pop psychedelia classic, Crimson and Clover. You made the world a better place because of that record right there. I mean, what an incredible...
What happened was, when we went out on the campaign with Hubert Humphrey, the biggest acts on the radio, it was all singles acts.
Yeah.
It was the Rascals, Association, Herman's Hermits, Gary Puckett. I'm leaving a lot of people out.
Yeah.
And us.
Of course.
And when I got back, 90 days later, the world had turned upside down. It was all albums.
Yeah.
It was Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Santana, Neil Young, Joe Cocker.
Crosby, Stills, and Nash.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the industry had gone through a monumental change, going from AM singles to albums and contemporary progressive rock.
Yep.
And FM radio. And that's how fast FM came on and changed everything. And so we get done. And you know, what are we going to do? It was just so fortunate for us. We were working on a little record called Crimson and Clover at that very moment, because Crimson and Clover allowed us to move from AM top 40 singles to FM progressive album rock, and allowed us to start selling albums. And there's no other record that we ever did that I believe would have done that for us in one shot.
No
like
question.
Crimson and Clover did. And then with the whole album, the Crimson and Clover album then was based around the new sounds that we had done. And we were producing ourselves. And we were writing for ourselves.
Well, speaking of Morris Levy, and that's one thing, he had this bad side and the scary side, but that's one thing that he did that a lot of record men would not allow people to. You got to produce your own record.
We were given freedom.
You got to come in,
And the funny part is, if we had gone in the beginning with Columbia or RCA or Atlantic or one of the corporate labels, I can tell you right now, we would have been lucky to be a one-hit wonder because we would have been immediately turned over to an in-house A&R guy. And that's probably the last time anybody would have ever heard. We would have been controlled. Yeah. And plus we'd have had, look at all the competition we would have had if we'd gone with Columbia or somebody. At Roulette, they needed us. There were no other artists.
I know.
And they hadn't had a hit in 3 years. And so I was allowed freedom that I would have never had and to learn my craft.
Yeah.
I would have never been allowed to do that.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's talk about Crimson and Clover. I really want to break that down because your favorite flower, your favorite color, you roll out of bed one day and...
People say, what does it mean? Two of my favorite words that sounded very profound when you say them together, and it's just a little 3-chord progression backwards. And that's really all it was. And it was the fastest record I think we did the whole record in 5 hours.
It's crazy.
Start to finish. And it ended up being the biggest selling single that we had. Yeah. And the Crimson and Clover album did 3 million albums.
Yeah, and you sold 6 million copies of Crimson and Clover, the single. Yeah. But let's talk about what makes that such a unique song. The arrangement, the echo, and the phasing effects. The first vocal, the That was a really unconventional way to start a single.
Well,
and then the guitar.
I guess that's true. I hadn't thought of it. It just to me just seemed a very natural thing to do. But as we got into the record, I loved the backwards chord progression, and I loved the tremolo on the guitar. That worked. I had stolen that from a record earlier that I loved, Harlem Nocturne by the Viscounts that I'd heard years before that.
Wow.
And I'd never really heard tremolo on a record since then, used quite that way. And then at the very end, we started playing with the fade, the vocals on the fade.
Yeah.
And just for the hell of it, I said, let's run the vocals through the amp like we did the guitar. That was back when, if you wanted to make a sound wiggle, you had to basically figure it out yourself. There was no synthesizer to push. So we ran the vocals through the guitar amp and got the tremolo exactly in sync with the rhythm of the music, and then ran it back through the board and recorded it like that. And that became, that silly little idea became the signature sound for the record.
And then the bass and the drum and that breakdown, that was also really risky. But again, the album rock was taken over.
Well, we had to make a long version from the short version instead of the other way around. Instead of editing down the long version, we basically had to build a long version. And as a matter of fact, we did that on the album, and it went slightly off key because we used this is really getting out in the weeds, but we used what was called a variable frequency oscillator. Isn't that a great name? And we misjudged it slightly.
Because you had to let it warm up, but it didn't have enough time to warm up.
And then we did our first Ed Sullivan show. And that was a scary moment because, well, first of all, the week before we did the first Sullivan show, Ed Sullivan introduced us. Actually, right here, Tony Jones and the Shondells. Which means he can't read and he never heard of you. So, Tony Jones and the Shondells. If I wasn't scared before, I'm terrified now. And we go, and they wanted us to do Crimson and Clover live. Well, you knew that was a train wreck waiting to happen. I mean, there's no way these guys were going to get the fade and everything. So I begged them to let me do a lip sync. And they let me, but they said, we want a 4-track. We want to mess with the mix so it doesn't sound like, we're taking it right from the record. So I went and I made 4 tracks of mono with at different levels so that it looked on their VU meters like they. And I can't believe that I did that. I handed it to them, and they never knew the difference. Yeah, they never knew the difference. But we had to do an ending. We had Crimson and Clover over and over. We had to end on a big note, and so we did that. But that was one of the scariest. Shows I ever did in my life, like doing Crimson and Clover on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Gosh. Well, I also love, like, when you do the breakdown before you go into the vocal part, the guitar and the bass and the drum together, it almost sounds like one instrument. That's just so great about how you did that. And then the harmonies and the background vocals.
Many of those things were just happy accidents. And I am convinced that so many of the things that makes #1 records and makes these classic sounds and that you think you must have thought that through and did. Nah. You just go in and you do it. And if you stay in the studio long enough and you have good people around you, good things are going to happen. Your accidents will be pluses, not minuses.
Yeah. Just revolutionary, because nobody had ever heard that tremolo vocal like you did, like you sound like you're underwater and all that.
Well, that was something that we're very lucky with, because it was just kind of something that was a 30-second thing that really ended up working. It became a signature sound.
Yeah. Well, you had this elaborate release plan for that thing. You had all this stuff planned. You go into WLS in Chicago. Tell me that story.
We blew it. Roulette loved Crimson and Clover. We had changed our sound. We had, we're suddenly selling albums, and they wanted to make a big deal out of it. And, I blew it. I took the rough mix, and this is a rough mix that I had mixed with my elbows, basically. After we had done the record, I hadn't mixed it. I just literally put the thing up. It was a work tape to listen to. And, I took it to Chicago. I was playing there that weekend, and I took it up to WLS, which at that time was the biggest station in the country. Oh, yeah. And I play it for John Rook, the PD, and he says, "Oh, that's great." And now this is a rough mix. And then he plays it for Larry Lujak, who had just come on board, the big disc jockey there. And unbeknownst to me, they taped it. It taped my tape. And I go back down to the car, get in the car, and I hear world exclusive on WLS. Oh, and they're playing my rough mix. They're not supposed to be playing that. And I never got a chance to mix the record. I go back home, and I go up and there's a funeral wreath from WCFL, the other station, for me giving Crimson and Clover to WLS. And Morris says, "What the hell happened?" And so they had to release my 7.5 rough mix. The Crimson and Clover that we all know was a 7.5 rough mix.
Yeah.
I never got to mix the record.
Jeez.
That's a true story.
And the reaction is so huge that you just have to rush out, and you had to learn to live with it. Right?
I cringed every time I heard it, but yeah, I learned to like it, actually.
But that's kind of what made it
after it sold 1 million.
Yeah.
That's a true story.
Well, in '68, when it goes to #1, this was in December, and people misheard the lyric.
Oh, right? It was "Christmas is over." True story. Yes.
Well, Hubert Humphrey wrote the liner notes.
Hubert Humphrey wrote the liner notes to my Crimson and Clover album.
That was a first, too. When did a political figure ever written, that's just incredible.
Isn't that incredible?
It is. Well, Joan Jett, let's talk about that. She covers it, and it goes to #7 in 1982. It's her big single after I Love Rock and Roll. Crimson and Clover. And she performs it at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction.
Yeah, we did it together.
Tell me about how you felt.
Well, Joan asked me if I would do Crimson and Clover with her at the Hall of Fame when she was inducted 2 years ago. And I said, sure, I'd be honored to do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tommy James.
So Joan and I did it, and then joining us was Miley Cyrus and Dave Grohl. So you've got 4 generations of rock and rollers playing Crimson and Clover at the same time. It was really an amazing moment.
That must have meant something.
It really was.
Gosh.
It was really.
And then,
really
of course,
neat.
Prince to cover it.
Prince did it the most, maybe my favorite version.
Oh, yeah.
Prince did this futuristic version of Crimson and Clover just before he died.
I know.
And it went #1 digitally. It was a digital album called Lotus Flower.
Yep.
And Crimson and Clover was the single from the album.
What a beautiful feeling.
Well, in the movies, it's been used in High Fidelity, Frequency, Pirate Radio.
I'd also like to take this opportunity to apologize to a dear friend of mine.
Well, the last thing on Crimson and Clover, that week, 4 of the top 5 songs when you were at #1, Marvin Gaye, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, The Doors had a song, and Sly and the Family Stone, Everyday People. I mean, the power of that moment in music. I mean, those are songs that we listen to every day.
And you look, you look at the charts during the late 1960s, and it's really astonishing.
It is.
You know every song up to 40, 50.
I know.
And it's what I meant by none of us really realized what a historical time that was.
Oh, yeah. And how much it's influenced music right today, what we're listening to right now.
True. So the 52 years that I've been doing this in the majors has been, as the book said, one hell of a ride. And I'm just amazed at, the nooks and the crannies and all the different roads we've walked down.
Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about this psychedelic pop classic. What's your favorite cover version of the song? What are your memories of Tommy James and the rough mix of that station play that we hear today, and the guitar effect, the tremolo? Let us know below. Make sure to subscribe below if you like our videos. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Make sure to check us out on Patreon as well. And we got that new merch. Christmas is coming up. Let them know that you believe in rock and roll. Till next time, 3 chords.